Hello, today on A Female New Mexican's Political Point of View, we have guest Michelle Hernandez, who is a candidate for the State Supreme Court here in New Mexico. And welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here.
We are asking candidates questions. So the first one is always, can you tell us a little bit about your family history and your family?
Sure. My family is originally from Taos, New Mexico. My grandparents moved to Albuquerque in the early 50s by way of Leadville, Colorado, spent some time in California, settled in Alameda. And my parents actually met each other as adults, and they both happened to be from Taos, but they met here in Albuquerque. And I was born in Albuquerque. I went to St. Mary's for kindergarten. And then my mother and father and I, we moved back to Taos, and my dad was a high school teacher there for several years. And he made adobes during the summer, and we couldn't make ends meet living in Taos, and so he gave up teaching and was a restaurant manager in Gallup, New Mexico. And so we moved from Taos to Gallup, and we lived there for a period of time, and then we moved back to Albuquerque. And I went to Del Norte High School, and I graduated there. I am an only child. I graduated from Del Norte. I went to TBI, and from TBI I went to TBI when it was still called TBI. And I worked my way through TBI and then went to the University of New Mexico, and I graduated magna cum laude there with a degree in political science. I was very active there on the minority recruitment and retention program as it existed at that time. I was the Fiesta chair. I was active on the Clinton Gore campaign and several other local campaigns there as well. And then I went to Los Angeles, and I attended UCLA Law School for 3 years, and then I returned to New Mexico, and I have been in back in New Mexico for the last 15 years.
Can you said your law degree was in California and everything. Can you give us a little more details about your career since you've been back here? What
Sure.
you're doing?
Sure. Well, when I came back from Los Angeles, I came to New Mexico, and I am married and I have 2 children, so I came back to raise my family here in New Mexico. And my first job as an attorney was at the New Mexico Supreme Court, and I was an attorney there. I was a judicial law clerk to Justice Baca, and I served there for 2 years, and I draft legal opinions, did legal research and writing and briefs, and sat in on oral arguments during that period of time on all matters that came before the Supreme Court for that tenure that I was there. And after that, I've been in private practice for the last 13 years. I office in Albuquerque, but I've had a statewide practice. I've handled a variety of matters. I have handled workers' compensation matters, wills and trust, small personal injury, wrongful death cases, regulatory matters. Pretty much runs the gambit with the type of material that I've handled. I'm proud to say that I've done a lot of pro bono work involving domestic relations. And they're very difficult cases, but they were very fulfilling to handle.
Okay, and one of the questions coming up lately is with the new state Supreme Court rules on lower court judges. If elected to be a justice on the Supreme Court, what are your views on ethics and also restraints for the judges?
I think that it's very difficult for judicial candidates and for judges to strike the necessary balance to remain impartial, but at the same time to be involved citizens. They wouldn't be in the position they were if they were not involved in civic matters and very involved politically. So I do think at this point that it is right for the Supreme Court to review the rules and make sure that we are still encouraging judges to be active in their communities and active in political ways where they can do so without seeming impartial.
More on the lines of civic education as opposed to any real involvement in policies and politics, right?
Well, I definitely believe they have an obligation to be involved in civic activities, absolutely. But I do think that the right to vote obviously is one of the most important rights that we have. And I don't believe that becoming a judge or judicial candidate should rob that right. And I don't believe that it's right for anybody to have to make a decision on who to vote for without becoming informed. So I do believe that the rules need to be reviewed and some mechanism in some manner be created so that judicial candidates and judges have the ability, just as everybody else does, to assess the candidates who are running and assess political policies before they make those votes.
Okay. Tell us why, at this point in your career, you want to become a Supreme Court justice.
Well, as I said, I started my career at the Supreme Court, and so I really did get inspired by working for Justice Baca, who's been actively endorsing me and working on my campaign. I was inspired by his personal background, which is so similar to my very humble, modest background, and I admired and respected the level that he had achieved and what he had done for public policy and for equality and the things that he could do as a Supreme Court justice. So I knew at the time that I left the Supreme Court, working there as a judicial law clerk, that there would come a day that I would run for that office and serve as a justice. The reason why I'm doing so now is now I come full circle with the rest of my legal experience. As I mentioned, I've handled a variety of cases. I still have a health law specialization, which there's only a handful of lawyers that carry that specialization, which I think, considering Obamacare and a lot of things that are going on with healthcare reform, I think is very timely and is going to come in very handy. And I have been appointed and serve on the Rules of Civil Procedure, which is another, the basic tenet of civil procedure is something that Supreme Court justices review every day. So I considered myself an expert on the rules of civil procedure and healthcare law, and as a litigator in New Mexico, I have had, as I said, I've had cases, I office in Albuquerque, but I've had cases as far north as in San Miguel County and as far south as Eddy and Chavez County. So I have had that perspective of a statewide practice that gives me the experience and the well-rounded background that I could serve on the New Mexico Supreme Court. And as a native New Mexican, and as any New Mexican, I hold those ideals about hard work and humility and public service really near and dear to my heart. And so that's why I want to serve on the New Mexico Supreme Court.
As a mother, do you feel that it's a good thing to provide a role model for our young women to say that, yes, they can serve on the Supreme Court at some point in their lives?
Absolutely, absolutely. One of the biggest pleasures I've had in running this campaign is inspiring my two young daughters. And so I know that regardless of what may happen with this race, I know that I have inspired them and hopefully running for the Supreme Court, maybe becoming a lawyer, but if not, just becoming active and knowing that we live in an entire community and that it's important to understand that we are all citizens and to understand the benefit of becoming involved. And particularly with women, I think that we need to always encourage our young women to remain involved, to be active, and to be leaders in their community.
Well, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you.
We look forward to seeing you more.
Thank you.